Hey, film fans, we're the Merco Movie Guys. I'm Clint Chaffer, and this is my buddy Chad Weeks.
We're a couple guys who like movies and like to talk about movies. Clint, tonight we have a special guest. We've got Noah Louck joining us. And do we consider Noah an A24 expert? Are we safe to say that?
That's what I've been told.
Yeah, he
so
said he's seen,
I think that's
he said he's seen 80% of the A24 films roughly. I'd say that qualifies him as an expert.
Yeah, I would agree. Noah, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, guys. Good to be here. I'll let you guys call me the expert. I won't say that I myself am an expert, so we'll see.
Yeah, well, if your list matches mine, then we'll agree on that. But if not, then maybe we'll have to have a disagreement.
So let's start off by telling the listeners what is A24, because I mean I feel like they kind of rolled onto the scene here not too awful long ago. And they've kind of taken the movie scene by storm here. So who wants to take a stab at explaining what A24 is?
Go ahead with that one, because I don't really know how long they've been around. I think they've been around longer than you think, because of the fact that there's some of those films that you don't even realize are A24 or A24, and I'm drawing a blank on what they are. But some of those early films that it's like, oh wow, that was A24. I do think that they've kind of found their own aesthetic, their own vibe now, where even they're different. I think that they speak a lot. They're a lot more different. They're a lot different vibe than all the other movies that we see out there in today's market. So I don't know if you want to elaborate more on that, Noah.
Yeah, I can give you my little spiel of what I think A24 is.
Absolutely.
So they're mainly a distribution company that started off making a couple one-off or distributing a couple one-off indie films, and they really, I would say, hit the spotlight and hit the general public eye when Moonlight came out.
Moonlight,
especially with Moonlight winning Best Picture, that really brought A24 to the forefront. And yeah, since then, I feel like they've, whether it's deliberately or not, I guess this is something that we can get into later when we talk about Heretic, but they've kind of developed and cultivated a culture around this elevated movie experience, movies that leave you with questions, not maybe not a ton of answers, but with a lot of questions and something to chew on. And we'll see later on if Heretic fits that box, and if that's even a fair criticism, and as this is like almost like a cult following that A24 has developed, and whether or not these fans are creating this almost a toxic environment now around A24.
I'm going to put the stamp on it. We're going to say expert after that. That was a perfect example of what an expert would say. But can you build off of that toxic environment and just talk about that a little bit? Expand on it if you could. What your thoughts are on that? Because is it like, are you talking like a pretentiousness around movies? Because I can kind of feel that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say especially around the horror sphere of A24 that you've seen most of their horror filmography be this new wave of quote unquote elevated horror.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's where it's not like a lot of like people, almost a pretentious feeling. They're like, oh, I don't like these cheap jump scares. I want something to shake me to the core. I want the themes of the movie to terrify me.
Yeah.
I want to leave the movie theater and have to go lay down.
Yeah.
and then so when newer movies come out, and if it doesn't check these boxes for these cult fans, they're getting upset. But A24 is just a distributing company, and I don't know if they're deliberately handpicking these movies to develop a certain vibe or film that they want to be associated with, or if they're just picking what they think is good.
Well, I know that they have a cult following. I was at the movie theater, I want to say maybe a year or two ago, and we're standing in line ready to get our popcorn, and there was a guy standing next to us with an A24 tattoo on his arm.
Really?
And you know, when you start seeing like a distribution company's logo tattooed on somebody, you know that they gotta have a pretty stout following at that point in time.
I don't remember that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody like that. But that's pretty wild. And to build off of that, Noah, something that I am guilty of saying that as well. It's like, I don't like the cheap jump scares. You know, I feel like and I think that there is a place for them. I really do. I think the jump scares are great if they are done properly. But if that's all it is, then then you're missing the point. And I agree. I think that there's this elevated level. I think it's also a little bit pretentious that it's like you almost feel guilty for enjoying a simple movie that maybe has those jump scares or whatever that everybody else does, and you're yucking somebody's yum or something like that, where it's like, oh, that's not a good enough horror movie for me. It's got to be this elevated level, and I do think that there's some gatekeeping with that. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things that I've noticed with A24 on a few of the films that I have watched from them, I go to I think they did Swiss Army Man, right? Wasn't that an A24 film?
I made you watch that when we were very inebriated at the end of a night, and it's like,
but it's true.
We got to try.
The only thing is, I actually went back after that night and I watched the whole thing. So just to experience, it in its truest form, right? But the funny thing that I would say, or the trend that I see on an A24 film, is it feels like they've almost gravitated towards an independent film feel and elevated that into the big screen, right? And I feel like a lot of not every one of their films by any means, but they feel different. They don't feel like these big flashy blockbuster films, right? They have almost like this independent vibe to them for being a big movies, right?
Agree with that, and that's the kind of the sense that I get too. Yeah, kind of an indie film on a bigger screen, basically.
Yeah.
Noah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say just to piggyback off that. Yeah, I think that A24 has selected just a wide variety of films that are all unique in their own way, and I feel like my biggest draw to them is all of these movies are so immersive and pull you into their world immediately.
Okay. I'm glad you.
It's just such a fun watch every time.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things that really stood out about one of my movies. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about Heretic. Have you seen Heretic? I'd assume.
Yeah.
Okay. And what were your thoughts on that? Let's just candidly, what are your thoughts on this one?
I've got a lot.
We try and avoid spoilers.
Oh, try to avoid spoilers.
Yeah, we try and talk about it lightly if it's a new release like this, we try and avoid spoilers. So just heads up.
Okay. All right. First and foremost, Hugh Grant 8.
Oh,
Hugh Grant, I would say for the most part, his horror debut, and he could not have been a better choice for this. And I think he delivered a masterclass performance.
On the way home, that it was weird because he was almost charming in this creepy, unsettling role, right? I felt like he was still charming,
right.
And I didn't really hate him. It's like, okay, let's hear what you have to say.
I would put this as, and this may be a bold statement because the guy's done a lot, but I think this is one of his best roles. He fit this role so incredibly well in Heretic.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Noah. I'd like to challenge you on that, but I don't disagree. So go ahead, Noah.
No, I don't disagree there. I think pretty much almost all of Hugh Grant's recent work, I would say, this whole Act 2, Act 3 of his career, because Act 1, clearly his leading role in all these rom-coms in the 90s.
Yep.
And now he's getting into a lot of diverse roles where you kind of just see him chew on a lot of dialogue. You see it in this movie, you see it in The Gentleman, you see it in, I don't know if you guys watch Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
Yeah. He's just chewing on dialogue and all of it, and he's killing it. I love it.
You're right. That's a great phrase to use, especially from The Gentleman, that chewing on dialogue. That's exactly what he did throughout that entire film. Great call out. I don't remember which one it was, but the two gals in this movie both did great. I feel like there was a little bit of a bait and switch in there, and again, I don't want to go into any spoilers, but I don't know if you got the same sense, but I felt like we were going one direction clearly, and then at some point, it was like, oh, okay, that's not what's going to happen here, and I don't want to. But did you get that feeling as well, you guys?
Yeah, I was familiar. I'm very familiar with one of what's her name?
Chloe East, but
yeah,
I can't remember which one was.
So Sophie Thatcher, I'm very familiar with her.
Is she the blonde or the brunette?
She is the brunette.
Okay.
She's the one. She's in the show Yellow Jackets. If you guys are familiar with that show.
I'm not. No.
Very,
Not-
very good show. Vouch highly for it.
Okay.
Definitely recommend. It's my favorite show, probably current show out right now.
Really?
Oh, nice.
But yes, and she's magnificent in it, and that's who I was expecting more of the story to revolve around.
Yep.
Not to give too many spoilers
Correct,
away.
exactly. Yeah, we're teetered on that line, but I agree. Chloe
Yes.
kind of stole the show at some point for whatever reason, and it just and you, I didn't expect that when it was set up. Like you could tell that like what was it? It was Sister Barnes was the brunette, and you could tell that like she was this strong type of role, and I think that led to more character development for Sister Paxton. You know,
Yes.
where she kind of had to become that person and realize that she had this power in herself. I know that's so cliche,
Right.
but there was character development in there, and I love the journey that we went on with her.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I would say like her journey throughout is that you find out like really early on you find out with Sister Paxton that she has a tough time articulating what she's thinking
Yes,
and what she means and her thoughts, but she's very observant.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you throughout the journey you see that character progression and seeing her being able to articulate under pressure what she thinks and what she really believes in.
exactly, and that was fantastic. They did a beautiful job of that, and I also think that the building off of that a little bit is when you talk about like A24. I think you mentioned it a little bit ago, like the ambiguousness of things. I think there was a lot of ambiguity in this film throughout, and I like that. I like it that it lets you draw your own conclusions, and there wasn't like there was never a point where they said this is the way this is or this is the way that is. It lets you draw a little bit of that throughout the film in a lot of different ways, and I love that.
In some ways, like this, I was like thinking of other films that made me feel maybe a similar way, right? And the one that I keep going back to is I'm going to struggle with it. Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane.
10 Cloverfield Lane. That's what this movie felt like to me.
Yeah. Was that an A24 film? I feel like that could be an A24 film.
I could see that.
It was not.
Okay.
I could see it being. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason why I draw that distinction between those two films is throughout the entire the first 3/4 of the film, really, you don't really know. You don't know what is the real, what's the reality that they're living in, right? Yeah. And you find yourself kind of going back and forth, and it's like, oh man, like this is, this guy's, you're thinking about him in this sense, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe he's onto something here. Like maybe this is like a whole totally different spin, right? And it kind of has you going back and forth where you never quite know where they're truly taking you until like that very end, right?
Yep.
Like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, okay, like didn't see that coming, right?
The word, the phrase, Hugh Grant ate, and my goodness, John Goodman ate in that film. That is one of the coolest roles. But I mean, he does in everything. I love he ate in Roseanne, for God's sakes.
Yeah. But no, that's my closest comparable film to this, as far as for like plot and how it made me feel. I don't know what it is, but I'm starting to gravitate towards these films that have a limited number of characters on the screen at any given time, right? And there's, what was that?
Players in this one.
Oh, players, yeah, players.
I don't know if you caught that in the credits, Noah, but that's what they listed them as, players.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're really, from a vast majority of the film, you're dealing with three individuals, right? Yep. And to see the dynamics between those three, to your point, you got to see a lot of character development, and of course, it kept you guessing throughout the entire thing as well.
Me guessing is, what is Noah's 5th favorite A24 horror film? And that's what the next.
Well, hold on. Hold on.
On.
I actually have, if we're going to jump off of Heretic, I actually wanted to throw a little fun fact out there. Of course, this was written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods from the folks that own the Last Picture House up in Davenport.
Yep.
for those of you that don't know their work, they're also the creators of A Quiet Place.
Yes.
So they wrote and directed the first Quiet Place, and have what would be another film of theirs?
65 was one.
65, yeah, 65, right?
Yep.
And but anyway, I thought this was really interesting. Fact about this is they were emphasizing that they used absolutely no generative AI during this film. Of course, with all the buzzwords around AI and how that's going to impact all sorts of different areas, right, of humanity, they want to make sure that that AI was not impacting the arts. And so they wanted to completely stay away from AI in creating this film. And I thought that was a pretty cool take when you think about this very powerful technology that's there that they decided to just bypass.
Well,
I thought that was kind of neat.
It's part of the writer strike that we had recently, right? That was one of the big points, was no AI to be used and that sort of thing. Is that, am I wrong on that? Or?
I think that's one of the things that they've negotiated for. I don't know if they want all aspects of AI, because AI was recently used in that movie Late Night with the Devil.
Solid movie.
Yes, but I'm wholeheartedly anti-AI in movies, and I feel like if any movie going forward uses AI, I feel like they should have to disclose it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
I think that's what you're going to have to start seeing, right? I use AI in my regular job, right? And if you create something using AI, you're supposed to disclaim that,
Yeah.
right? Or if you use that to assist, you're supposed to throw that disclaimer out. And I think that's probably going to be somewhat of a requirement moving forward, probably across the board on AI, and especially as it gets to the point. I mean, for how young it's been, it's already starting to blur lines, right? On
Right.
how do you know? And so I think there's going to have to be a point to make sure that they're calling that out to let the audience know whether or not it's AI derived or not.
Talk about Heretic. I want to skip it, and I'm putting Heretic as my number 5 on this list. So, so just to throw that out there, I do think that it was a great film. I think that it was a new take on something. Like we've seen the games, you've got to survive this game type of thing. I think one based on and even like Saw, you look at like they do you believe in this enough to get out of it, or are you committed enough to solve this puzzle or whatever, however that. But this, I feel like when you bring in religion and beliefs and things like that, it's a very tough topic to bridge. And I think they did an excellent job of it. And I think that also lets you decide your own conclusions. I think this is a really good movie, and I think it's going to be endlessly rewatchable too. And I think that's a big thing for horror films with me, is I want to be able to rewatch them. And this is one that I think I can rewatch and enjoy it multiple times.
Since we're wrapping up on Heretic, let's go around the horn. What are we rating it?
No, I'll go first since.
Okay. Yeah, I need to figure out what the scale is here.
Scale for me. I do have perfect films that you would put, like at a 10. So that just go from that. But I'm going to go with a 7.9. I want to put it at 8.1, but I just don't think I can. 7.9.
Okay. Noah, how about yourself?
Well, going back on our conversation earlier, where if I think that this movie fits in with the rest of A24 horror, and sadly for me, I don't think it does, personally. I thought the first hour and a half of this movie or so, hour and a half to first hour, was brilliant. Wasn't as big of a fan of the ending. And to me personally, I feel like, especially like when the credits roll, I feel like there wasn't really more for me to think about. I feel like everything was kind of lined out for me, and all of my questions were answered for the most part. And there wasn't really much for me to chew on after that. But I still enjoyed the performances were fantastic from everybody, and I did enjoy the story. very reminiscent of Barbarian for me.
Oh yeah.
But I would, in my rating, I would still give this 6.9.
Okay.
Teetering on the 7.1.
Yeah. So you're one step below me on this. And
Yeah.
it probably boils down to the ending. Whereas for me, I like that. And again, we don't want to talk about it, but I feel like there was a little bit of a what really happened type of thing, and there was a little bit of ambiguity. Man, I really struggle with this word. Ambiguity. But also, you mentioned Barbarian, and I just got to throw it out there. I have never seen a movie in my entire life that there is not one time where I'm like, oh yeah, I saw that coming, because everything was
Right.
an absolute left hook, or I mean, it's just crazy movie. Anyway, Clint, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm probably closer to Chad on this one. I had it in my head that I was a 7.7 on this, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I feel like that. I guess just a level set. I feel like that's a high score.
Yeah.
By the way, right?
Yep.
Like that's a good score for a movie.
6.9 is a high score too. So like, I mean, like they're all three. Yeah, we're all agreeing.
Yeah,
I agree.
and I gave it I think I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd.
Yep, exactly. Which would be literally a 7.0 if you were mathing that out.
Yeah,
you could do some math
but
there.
no, and a lot of that for me comes down to I thought casting was just fantastic in this movie. Like I thoroughly enjoyed the cast just overall.
How about the random Topher Grace?
I was just about to say. How about
I'm literally sitting next to I'm sitting between Clint and my wife, and I'm like, I lean to Clint. I'm like, I think that's Topher Grace after you see him the first time. And then Kayla, about 5 minutes later, she's like, isn't that the guy from that 70s show? I'm like, yeah, that's Topher Grace.
Yeah. I did the same thing to Abby. I go, that's Topher Grace.
Like you could barely tell, and then once he starts talking, it's obvious at that point. But yeah.
The original Eddie Brock.
Yes. Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
No. But yeah, like I said, casting I think did it for me. But I thoroughly enjoyed, like I said, the movie kept me guessing the entire time, and the ending. You know, I think there's a lot of endings out there, right, that you can end up kind of looking at and wishing they did, you know, maybe this, that, or the other thing. I enjoyed it. I did feel like at the very end, I still feel like I didn't necessarily know exactly what happened, right? Like it still left a little bit of what was next for the folks at that point. So, but nope, that's so again, I think we have a solid film. So I think with that, let's Noah, let's roll into your list. So what is your number 5 A24 horror film?
Coming in at my number 5 would be The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah. Wow. I did not expect this one to be here, but I told Clint, I'm like, Noah's probably going to go a little bit deeper dives into his, and Killing of a Sacred Deer is definitely there. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that one, Noah.
I love the movie. It's based Yorgos Lanthimos, Greek man. Movie's based off of a Greek myth.
It is
like the whole eye for an eye story.
I did not know that.
I'm not specific on the Greek story. It's the story of a Greek goddess and I think King Agamemnon.
Yeah,
the guy who invaded Troy.
Yep.
Apparently, King Agamemnon killed one of her sacred deer, and so she made him kill one of his daughters or sacrifice one of his daughters to her. So an eye for an eye, and that's kind of what this movie goes on. It stars Barry Keoghan and Colin Farrell, this was Barry's, I don't know if it was his breakout role, but it was definitely his introduction to me.
Who was Barry Keoghan in this one?
He's the kid.
I knew you were going to say that.
The main kid.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, again, I haven't seen this movie in probably 10 years. I don't know how long ago it came out, but it's been a while. I mean, couldn't have been 10 years. Couldn't have been that long ago. But but it's crazy that he was the kid in this film. So that's great.
So when did this film come out? Do we know the year on it?
Yeah, that pulled up, Noah. I got IMDb here.
I can.
But regardless, I agree that this was a
2017.
Okay, so 7 years ago. But yeah, I agree. This was a kind of a shock and awe type of film from A24. So like, and Colin Farrell, I think he did a fantastic job. Actually, Barry Keoghan, if I remember right, he did a really good job. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but he did awesome, if I remember right. So
I would say it was definitely his breakout role that like put him on the map for more dramatic, more serious roles.
I was just gonna say that's another actor whose second act in acting is just phenomenal, and that's Colin Farrell. Like his latest roles have just been fantastic. Like I swear, like the older the guy gets, like just the better he is.
Well,
not saying he was
ever
bad.
I don't know if you guys have been watching The Penguin, but one of probably the best comic book show I've ever watched.
I watched it with my wife, and I took October off to watch horror movies, and didn't take any time for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to binge it in November. So I can't watch that movie or that show without my wife. But I've heard good things, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah. They did say it's actually it's such good reception with the Penguin that the DC is actually talking about doing more spin-offs in that same kind of light. So
yeah, I've heard Gotham PD being thrown around.
Yeah, they said that right after the Batman came out, and I thought it was just a done deal and they were going to do it. So, which would be cool because like they did the Gotham, and it would be nice to have like I think that show had a lot of bones to it. If you could bring that in and put it as a HBO show or a Max show where it's you can actually use an R rating and be more violent and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I think you could build off of that and be great. I really enjoyed that show.
Absolutely.
It is funny. There's just some TV shows or movies that just need an R rating,
Yes.
and I think it took a while for me to fully understand or appreciate that. But you get some of these. I go back to like Suicide Squad and some of those of like, how much better would could they be? If they actually gave them a better rating, right? So let them take the handcuffs off a little bit. So
another thing, another factor on there I want to build off of is you mentioned Yorgo. Was it Yorgo Lanthimos? The question that I have before I mention this one is do you have any more Yorgos Lanthimos on your list?
On mine?
Yeah.
Okay. For horror.
Okay. All right. The Lobster. I mention The Lobster anytime I get a chance.
Oh yeah, that's probably my favorite movie is his.
Yes,
that was Colin Farrell as well.
Yes, exactly.
So,
yes.
Yeah. I literally I went on a Colin Farrell binge because I think on either the same day or within like a day of each other, I watched The Lobster and The Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, Banshees of Inisherin are fantastic. Oh, did we just lose Clint?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but yeah,
it's an incredible movie as well. Okay, Noah, let's keep going. What's your number 4 here?
Number 4 would be Ari Aster's Hereditary.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that is also my number 4, and I absolutely loved it. I think we all know the scene that sticks with us every time. But
the telephone pole.
Yes, the telephone pole, which was an incredible moment, an incredible. Yeah, it was fantastic. So, hang on one second here. You guys can come in here for a minute, and just if you got 30 minutes, just sit down and listen. So, yeah. Sorry, my parents showed up, and that's just what happens.
That's just what happens.
Yes, exactly. So, but no, I agree, and I think that when you talk about the elevated horror, I think this is the perfect example of that. That's exactly what this is. It's elevated horror, and it is. It's not simple. I think that who plays the son in there?
Alex.
I can't remember his name, but I think that when you look at
Alex Wolff.
Okay, so when you look at that film, I saw something online, about looking back at that film, like in looking back at it, you see a lot of differences in why the things that she said, why his mother said, were so offensive to him throughout it, and I think that that's kind of cool too. They built in things that I didn't even realize were there.
Yeah, I agree. I would say at its core, this movie is like a family drama, a very intense family drama.
It is, And you see that with Toni Collette, the way she talks to him. It's almost like she hates her son at some points, and it is so like that's probably more horrific than the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the most horrifying thing is Toni Collette getting snubbed at the Oscars, not even getting a nomination.
Correct.
For this movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a wasn't there another film that she had that she got snubbed on? Would have been
yeah.
But
Well, I have a fun fact about this this movie. So Colin Stetson is the one that did the score for this movie.
okay.
And it was interesting because he actually utilizes a technique by using unconventional instruments and techniques to invoke a sense of dread and unease. So the
I'd say I felt that.
Yeah, I definitely felt that.
So I think that's kind of cool to put that thought, into how a movie's score can impact you emotionally as you're watching it.
Well, and yeah, I would agree. Well, you never feel that like you never feel like it's like that typical horror movie where it's just in your face and again jump scares and things like that. It's like this ominous feeling throughout the entirety of it. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and then even to piggyback off of that, so like the casting, fantastic, performances, fantastic, the score was great, and I love the filmography in it, and the use of the miniatures and the miniature houses throughout it, and zooming in to and then becoming the room was like just genius, and it almost gave you this. For me, it had this feeling as if because the movie revolves around this, satanic prince controlling everything. And it almost makes you feel like when it's zooming in on those miniatures that like these people that you're zooming in on don't actually have control over their lives.
Yeah.
And that they're being controlled. And that's what like these miniatures are like whoever is controlling these miniatures in this miniature house is the one who has control over them.
That up from it, but that's a great insight on those. So I like that. Again, that was my number 4 as well. So Noah, you want to keep rolling? Let's do what's your number 3?
Okay, number 3, getting into my favorite horror director in general, and especially favorite A24 horror director, Robert Eggers with The Witch.
Okay. All right. Okay.
This is Anya Taylor-Joy's breakout role.
Man, she was fantastic in this.
Yeah, and I love Robert Eggers. I love everything he does. I love he is historical accuracy is very important to him, and his co-writers, co-producers spend a lot of time studying historical language from that time to make sure they use historically accurate dialogue throughout the whole film.
He even like focused on like getting historical things for like the sets and the attire and like he was very focused on that historical piece, right?
Yeah, he does so much. He does insane amount of research for his movies. Yeah, he's done historical architecture from The Witch to The Lighthouse to The Northman.
Well, I kind of expected this one because I know you're a fan of The Northman. I don't know exactly how I know that. I don't know if it was a letterbox following or whatever, but I knew you were a Northman fan. So my take on so I looked up Robert Eggers and just to see what films he had done, and all 3 of his films are films that I thought, I don't know if they were I feel like they were pretentious for me. And I don't want to be insulting when I say that, but I felt like The Witch was really good. The Lighthouse, I feel like they try to do too much. And like The Northman, like I loved it, but also it's like, I don't know. I don't love his films, as a whole, but also I understand that they are fantastic. I understand them. There's a lot of things. So here's a fun one that Clint and I talk about a lot. The movie Drive should be. I'm sure it's one of your favorite films, right? With Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling
Or Driver, right? It's Driver.
No, just Drive.
Drive. Okay, I was
Drive.
right.
Yeah, Drive.
It's one of those things that like it's a good film. Call me a film bro or whatever you wanted to say, but like I think they're great. but they wouldn't be in my top list. And I watched The Witch a couple of times because I keep wanting to say, like, what did I miss on this one? And it was really good. And the second time I enjoyed it more, but I didn't love it. So it's
no. I feel like Chad just got on his soapbox
I
and
did.
just
I just
explained
pour Noah's
why he
ideas
thinks
down.
you're wrong on this. Like right here, like he's like, let me run down Noah's movies right
But
here.
it's not, because like Noah's right. This is a better film than what I give it. I'm not giving it enough respect. I really am not, and I know that because I've seen people that I respect, like Noah, talking about how great this film is. But it's just, for me, it's for something about it. It just misses, and I don't know why that is. And
It's understandable.
Go ahead.
And I would say that Robert Eggers, he's at like the top when it comes to elevated horror.
Yep.
In the sense that like when it comes to like just his themes that he plays with, his set pieces, it is very dreary.
Yeah.
Very dark.
Yep.
Very slow. Like it just a slowly agonizing feeling just coming over you throughout the whole time.
And I
It's
feel
like he's trying to torture the audience a little, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and I feel like
exactly
Yorgos Lanthimos is that way, but like the opposite end of that. And I love him. You know what I mean? Like everything he does, it's like,
right.
What's the newest one that he just came out with? I haven't watched it yet.
Kinds of Kindness.
Kinds of Kindness, and I'm like, I can't wait to see it because whatever he does, I love it. So I totally understand, and like I said, it's just not my cup of tea. So,
well,
understandable.
Yeah,
I do have a fun fact for The Witch here as well. The goat named Black Phillip became an iconic symbol of the film, with audience praising its unsettling presence and pivotal role in the story.
Yeah, I agree with that. That Black Phillip was great in it. I just said that about a goat.
Yes,
but he really was. He really did.
Yeah,
Great.
I have a beer glass with a Black Phillip on it, and he's wearing a red sweater that says 666.
You missed an opportunity then, Noah. You could have just taken a drink right now of that.
Right.
That would have been perfect.
Very cool.
Perfect. Chad, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Midsummer, and you want to talk about bringing you into like that area. I struggle with this one. I probably would have ranked it higher if I would have felt that it was like a horror type of film. But I loved Midsummer. Again, it immerses you in it. You feel like you're entrenched in this cult, and it just gives you that uneasy feeling throughout the whole. You know that something bad is happening the entire time, and you can't really stop it. I don't know. There's something special about it, and I think that it's funny that it's the polar opposite of your typical movies or horror films, because it's all daylight. It is so bright and it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And not this dark and ominous thing. It's bright. It's beautiful. It's this beautiful summertime, but it's horrible too. I don't know. There's something.
That's exactly what I was gonna talk to there, Chad.
Yeah.
Is just when watching this film, it was almost odd that you are in a horror film, right?
Yeah.
Or in this tragic story here, yet it is just beautiful outside.
Yep.
And that is just such an odd feeling when you're watching a movie like that. And it's, again, we're used to darkness, right? And darkness is scary and in its own right. And then this one, it's just bright and sunshiny and beautiful scenery in the background while all this horrific stuff is happening, right?
And for me, this movie, it doesn't make my top 5, sadly, but it's this movie, which did for me what which Ari Aster's latest movie, Beau is Afraid, did for a lot of people. This movie was too uneasy for me.
Okay, so that's where you would say about the Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. I have not seen that one yet because it's not that I haven't had a chance, but I'm nervous about my takeaway from that.
Right. A lot of people were turned away from it because it gave them a very uneasy feeling, and they ended up not liking it because of that. And for me, I was kind of Midsummer. Towards the end of the movie, it just kept building and building and building. I was feeling more and more uneasy.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the lightness or the immersiveness of it. I was too immersed, maybe. but I was just like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. I love that. I love
It-
that explanation, especially. Yeah, that's great.
It is funny how movies can do that, though. There are just some movies that it's like I either want to just stop watching it, or like in the end, I'm just like, thank goodness it's over. Like,
Yeah.
thank goodness I'm out of that realm
Yeah,
at this point.
exactly.
In time, you know, and there is something unique to that. Not every movie can make you feel that.
Also,
way.
I would be remiss if I did not mention Florence Pugh, because I absolutely adore Florence Pugh, and anything she's in is I'm so in on. Like I love her. She's my favorite new like actress up and coming. Love Florence Pugh. So, okay,
All right, are we on to number 2?
Number 2, yeah. I'll kick in my number 2. I think my number 2 is Talk to Me. And I feel like Talk to Me is a classic horror film that is made with a fresh, just a newer take. And this is the first like horror film that like really gets down to the roots of like really just scaring the hell out of you. And I haven't seen that in a while. Again, it's dealing with the dead. It's dealing with everything that is very cliche and you're very used to when you watch horror films. But a fresh take on it, in my opinion, and I couldn't be happier with the result.
No, have you seen Talk to Me?
Yeah, I did see Talk to Me in it, and funny enough, doesn't make my top 5, even though it was probably my most favorite horror movie of 2022.
Really?
I love the young Australian cast. I loved everything about the movie. Just I would say it probably comes in at like 6 for me.
Really? Okay.
Nice.
Okay. I can respect that, and I understand. Again, I don't feel like this is the elevated horror that we're talking about. I feel like it is more of like it is something from the 90s or early 2000s, and it's just done better than that. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's what we're used to, but it's just done better than the slasher films or whatever. And there are some jump scares, and there are some like just moments that rock you to the core, but it's good. It's good. I love this movie.
Yeah, and I love this movie's use of like there's times in the movie where she's trapped in between that void,
Yeah.
almost like hell-ish.
Yep.
Like, and I love a horror movie, especially that can just depict a good hell or void, where it's like her, it's just a void, or like I love movies that do like depict hell as just like tons of hands and arms grabbing.
Yes.
you constantly.
Yes.
And, like, it doesn't have to be this like fiery, burning like landscape.
Yep.
Like everybody's personal hell can be much different.
Well, a couple little fun facts here about Talk to Me is it's known for its impressive practical effects and not relying heavily on CGI. So that was one of the call outs. And I know Chad, you and I's conversations like with John Wesley Norton, you know, and his appreciation for practical effects over CGI. So I thought it was pretty cool to see that within this movie. And you know, you talk about being one of your favorite movies of that year. It actually holds a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So
Really?
that's a tough score to get and to be able to hold.
Beats Noah's number 2. What do you got for number 2, Noah?
For my number 2, I have The Lighthouse, another one. That
I knew it. I knew that would be on there, and I didn't mean to spoil it, but I knew it was going to be on there. So learn me on The Lighthouse. Explain to me.
For me, it's just, and maybe it's just, I think it's for a lot of people, it's just your personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Robert Eggers, magnificent.
Yep.
Another thing for me, shot on 35 millimeter.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love old school film. Very immersive for me. Also, just to watch Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, 2 of my favorite modern day actors,
sure.
just go at it. Yeah. Just slowly spin into madness.
Yep.
And was just a joy to watch for a while. And then it was one of those things where afterwards I'm like, oh, thank God this is over. Let me go lay down.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that one, Noah. And that's what, like, for me, it was the spin into madness. I mean, like, again, you knew it was coming right off the bat, but also it's like, all right, I'm in for a ride here. And both of them were fantastic. I think that these films, like Clint was talking earlier about having a minimal cast, and this is definitely that. The fact that those two could feed off of each other and have this type of film is incredible and make me feel. But the thing is, like, throughout the entirety of that film, that was one where, again, I'm like, I just don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about anything. I don't enjoy watching this. Like, it's like I want this to be over type of thing.
Yeah.
And
I was gonna say, like, can we just go back to them doing chores around the White House?
Yeah.
Like, can I just watch that for 2 hours?
Yeah, exactly. I do think though, like the visuals of it, it was beautiful. I mean, like that black and white, that 35 millimeter, it was beautifully done. Even like it's funny, but like a screenshot of like Willem Dafoe, like his madness face, and he's got a great one. He's got a great maddening face. It's a work of art. It really is, and it's crazy that these creators are able to find a way to frame that and just really bring out that absolute madness from Willem Dafoe off of one shot. And I do think that this film was absolutely beautiful. So I do agree with that.
One of the you guys have talked about just the how it was shot, and one of the notes on this film is having the aspect ratio that it has actually drives to the claustrophobic feel that audiences are getting throughout that entire film as well. So you're feel like you're in that confined space with a tighter aspect ratio. So I thought that was interesting.
And that's what I'll piggyback off that. That's what I have on my notes for like almost all of these A24 movies, including Heretic. And what A24 seems to grasp with a lot of their horror films is that feeling of claustrophobic, as that's their way of scaring you instead of jump scares.
Just almost driving.
It's
like
what's
driving that
the movie.
anxiety level up, right?
Right.
Get that claustrophobia. Claustrophobic is a great way to just sum that movie up in its entirety, unless you want to just say The Mermaid, and then that's also another way to sum it up in its entirety. So,
right.
But all right, go ahead, Clint.
I was just gonna say, on a claustrophobic one, I always go back to The Descent. Like that's how I felt during that like entire movie. Was like I felt like I was in that cave.
You know my love for The Descent. The Descent, in my opinion, is the perfect horror movie, and it's my number one of all time. Like I love it. Love The Descent.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of number ones, let's get into the number ones. Noah, we're gonna save your number one for last.
Wait,
so
Chad, did we do Chad's number two?
Yeah, my number two was Talk to Me.
Yep. Oh, right. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Chad, we'll kick into your number one.
Number one, and again, I don't know how horror this is, but I feel like if it's A24, there's all bets are off, and I'm putting Green Room as number one for me. I loved Green Room. I watched it, and it's again, I feel like it is that kind of classic type of horror film, but also completely different. I don't know if you know much about this one, Clint. This was basically it was a band that was basically stumbled upon something. Give me the synopsis on this one again, because it's been a long time since I saw it. But when I did, I remember thinking, man, I just absolutely love this.
Here's the synopsis.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Do your thing. Yeah.
I was gonna say I can do this because this is my number one as well.
Okay. I was wondering.
Well, there we go.
If you hadn't said it by now, I was thinking it's got to be his number one too, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll give you the quick synopsis.
Yeah.
So the movie follows a young, like trying to make it punk band.
Yep.
They're running low on funds. They're running low on gas, and they're trying to do a couple last shows before so they can make it back home to Washington.
Yes.
It takes place in kind of rural Oregon. They end up finding this guy that does an interview with them in a little show. There's some kid with a mohawk, and then he barely gives them any money. They get very upset with him and like pin him up against the wall. And he goes, and of course, anybody pinned up against the wall, they go, wait, I have an idea.
Yeah.
My cousin works for a bar way out here in the sticks, and they'll pay good money for you guys to play. The only thing is that they're skinheads.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. Anton Yelkic. I hope I spelled his name right. Yelchin. Gone too soon, man, because that dude was awesome.
He's the one that got pinned on his mailbox, right?
Dude, his
He got
garage.
on his mailbox or a gate, something like
I
that.
thought it was his garage door, maybe his gate, but it basically it was in park and it kicked out of park. I think it was a Jeep.
Yeah,
actually.
No, it was a Jeep. It was like a 2014 Jeep Grand Cherokee, if I remember right, and I think they had a recall on Jeep. That. So
yeah, he's done a lot of great things in his short filmography, and I really
he was in Star Trek and did like a
correct
amazing job in there.
Yeah. Also, Patrick Stewart was in this film.
Speaking of Star Trek,
yep, exactly.
Star Trek as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, starting to see a trend.
Also, I feel like the Green Room, as far as like all of these films we talked about, some of them are this elevated horror, and some of them take a little bit more to digest. I think the Green Room, it's just good. Everybody's gonna like it. You watch that movie, you're gonna like it. Like it's just. And again, that impending doom throughout the entirety of it, the dogs and everything, it's great.
So what I almost hear from you all, though, like some of these have been very clear cut, like they have a horror aspect to it. This almost sounds more like a thriller to me. Like, is that what you kind of classify the Green Room as?
So this,
I would say it's like a horror thriller. I would say horror is just your overarching genre with like horror thriller as like your your subgenre. But I mean, there is some very terrifying moments in this movie, and Patrick Stewart gives a performance that I mean you can put him up there with like horror movie villains up there with like Hannibal Lecter type.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Tough to look at the same in X-Men after that. Like he's not that.
Yes. Yeah, that's not my Professor X.
Yeah. Touche. But no, I agree. I think that, I don't know. I think that those lines, like the thriller and the horror film, it's tough to say because, again, I don't even know if this one fits into that horror thing because it's not your typical slasher, but it's definitely a slasher, right? So
and I mean, like, I feel like the horror elements come into play because with a lot of these like thrillers and action thrillers, you see these stars like your Keanu Reeves, your Jason Statham's, just making all the right decisions throughout these thrillers. Just like like they got a bad guy against them, but against all odds, they're just messing them up the whole way through.
Yeah.
But this one is like real people making real decisions, and in these moments, real people are going to make a lot of bad decisions.
I think that is a great summarization of it because that is exactly what happens. A lot of that bad decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad decisions made, and you see the consequences of those bad decisions.
Yep, and
play out.
It's not the running up the stairs when you should run out the door type of bad decisions. It is things that like, okay, I'm behind you on this. I think this could work, but then it just doesn't work out for him. You know what I'm saying? Like I agree. They are intelligent, well thought out, poor decisions. Yeah,
it's sticking your arm out the door and
Yep, that's exactly right.
Snowpiercer. Yeah. Right? That's what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. But and to piggyback even off of our conversations earlier about the claustrophobia of the A24 movies, I love what this movie does. It starts off, a band on like a road trip.
Yep.
And when they are on the way to this remote bar in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, you get these kind of almost like a nod to The Shining, in the opening of The Shining, when they're doing all the curvy, the very zoomed out view of like a van or car going through the forest. And then all of a sudden, when you're there, you're zoomed right in.
Yeah,
and it's claustrophobic. You're in one room. For a lot of the movie.
Yeah,
and it's intense. You feel the pressure. Like literally, there's pressure. I mean, there's like they're trapped in this room, and there's just constant pressure on them from the outside.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to watch this movie again. Like maybe tonight. I mean, we got the Tyson fight tonight, so can't watch it tonight. But sometime real soon, I'm going to watch this film again because, again, I think it is endlessly rewatchable as far as horror films go. And yeah, great call out. I'm glad we are in agreement on that one.
Well, Noah, this has been a blast, running through different A24 films here. Thank you for jumping on the podcast. I appreciate the conversation, and this was great. So with that, the credits are rolling.
Lights are coming on.
And that's the end of the show.